Every morning, the puppy left something on his porch. On the seventh day, it brought a dead man's dog tag. The sun had barely climbed above the pine-covered ridges of western Montana when Nathan Walker opened his front door and froze. The morning air carried the scent of wet earth and cedar. A thin layer of dew shimmered across the weathered wooden boards of his porch. There, resting neatly beside his welcome mat, lay a tarnished military dog tag attached to a faded steel chain. For several seconds, Nathan simply stared. The retired Navy SEAL was not a man easily surprised. At 54 years old, he had spent decades solving problems, reading situations, and staying calm under pressure. Yet something about the small object at his feet made his chest tighten. Because this wasn't the first gift. 6 mornings earlier, he had discovered an old brass compass. The next day, a worn pocket knife. Then a faded challenge coin. After that came a weathered photograph, a broken wristwatch, and a small American flag folded with surprising care. Each item appeared overnight. Each item seemed deliberately placed. And each morning, shortly after Nathan found the object, the same German Shepherd puppy would appear at the edge of his property. The puppy couldn't have been more than 4 months old. His oversized paws looked too large for his body. His sable coat shimmered with shades of black and gold whenever sunlight touched it. Bright amber eyes watched Nathan from a distance with an intelligence that felt almost unsettling. The little dog never barked, never begged for food, never approached close enough to be touched. He simply watched, waited, then disappeared back into the forest. Nathan bent down and picked up the dog tag. The metal felt cold against his fingertips. Years of wear had softened the engraved letters, but not enough. His pulse slowed, then stopped. He knew that name. He remembered it instantly. Ryan Mercer. The memory hit like a gust of wind through an open door. 18 years earlier, Ryan had served beside him during a mission overseas. A man known for his steady hands, quick smile, and unwavering loyalty. A brother in every way that mattered. Nathan had not seen that dog tag since the day Ryan never came home. The retired SEAL swallowed hard and looked toward the tree line. The puppy was there again, standing perfectly still between 2 tall pines. Watching him, waiting. The morning breeze stirred the dog's fur. Neither moved, neither looked away. Then the puppy turned and trotted into the woods. For the first time in a very long time, Nathan felt something stronger than routine, stronger than loneliness, stronger than the silence that had followed him for years. He felt a question, and deep in his bones, he knew the little dog was carrying more than gifts. He was carrying a message. The rest of that day passed in a silence that felt different from all the others. Nathan sat at the small wooden table beside the window of his cabin, the dog tag resting near a steaming mug of black coffee. Outside, late autumn clouds drifted slowly across the Montana sky, casting long shadows over the rolling hills beyond his property. Usually, Nathan welcomed the quiet. He had spent years building a life around it. But now the silence seemed filled with questions. The cabin itself stood alone on 30 acres of pine forest and open meadow. It was not large, but it was sturdy, the kind of place built to outlast storms. A stone fireplace occupied one wall. Military photographs lined another. Most visitors would have seen medals, framed certificates, and old unit pictures. Nathan saw something else. Memories, promises, faces, some still present, some long gone. His gaze settled on a photograph taken nearly 2 decades earlier. 4 young men stood shoulder to shoulder beneath a bright desert sky. Sunburned faces, dust-covered uniforms, easy smiles. Ryan Mercer stood second from the left. Nathan reached for the frame without realizing it. Ryan had been the kind of man people trusted immediately. He remembered the way Ryan could calm nervous teammates with a simple joke. The way he called everyone brother, even during the hardest days. Time had softened many memories, but not those. Nathan slowly leaned back in his chair and stared out the window. He had spent 18 years convincing himself that the past belonged in the past. Retirement had made that easier. Most mornings followed the same rhythm. Wake before sunrise. Walk the property. Repair whatever needed fixing. Eat dinner alone. Sleep. Repeat. It was simple, predictable, safe. Yet the appearance of that puppy had disturbed something he thought was buried forever. Near sunset, he stepped onto the porch. The air carried the scent of pine needles and distant rain. Somewhere beyond the tree line, a hawk cried into the fading light. Nathan scanned the forest. Nothing moved. No puppy. No sign of anyone. He was about to head back inside when his eyes caught something unusual near the edge of the gravel driveway. A set of small paw prints pressed clearly into the damp soil. Fresh. He followed them for several yards before stopping. The tracks led directly toward the woods. Nathan crouched and studied them. The puppy had come alone. Again, no human footprints. No tire tracks. No clues. Only the tiny impressions left by oversized paws. A cold breeze brushed across his face. He stood slowly and looked toward the darkening forest. Somewhere beyond those trees, a young German shepherd was carrying pieces of a story that should have been impossible. And for reasons he could not explain, Nathan suddenly knew one thing with absolute certainty. Tomorrow, if the puppy returned, he would follow. The next morning arrived wrapped in silver fog. A cold mist drifted between the pines, softening the edges of the world beyond Nathan's cabin. He had been awake since before dawn, sitting quietly beside the front window with a thermos of coffee and a patience forged through years of discipline. The dog tag still rested on the table behind him. Every few minutes his eyes returned to it, as though the engraved name might somehow explain itself. Outside, the forest remained still. Then, just after 7 o'clock, movement appeared near the edge of the meadow. The puppy had returned. Nathan stood immediately. The young German shepherd emerged from the fog, carrying something small in his mouth. His oversized paws moved carefully through the wet grass. He approached the porch, placed the object beside the welcome mat, and stepped back. Unlike previous mornings, Nathan did not move toward the gift. Instead, he quietly opened the door and remained still. The puppy froze. Amber eyes locked onto Nathan's face. For a long moment, neither moved. The breeze carried the scent of pine sap and damp earth between them. Then the puppy turned and trotted away. Nathan grabbed his jacket and followed. The distance remained constant. Close enough to keep the dog in sight. Far enough not to frighten him. The puppy crossed the meadow and slipped into the forest. Nathan moved after him beneath towering pines that stretched nearly 80 feet overhead. Needles softened the forest floor, muting every footstep. Shafts of pale sunlight filtered through the branches as the morning slowly brightened. The puppy never looked back. Yet somehow he always seemed aware of Nathan's presence. Whenever Nathan slowed, the puppy paused. Whenever Nathan caught up, the puppy continued forward. It felt less like a chase and more like an invitation. Nearly 40 minutes passed. The terrain grew steeper. Fallen logs lay scattered among moss-covered rocks. Nathan pushed through low branches and crossed a narrow stream no more than 3 feet wide. The cold water splashed against his boots. Ahead, the puppy stopped beside an old cedar stump. His tail wagged once. Then he picked up another object hidden in the grass and continued onward. Nathan's pulse quickened. This was no random scavenger hunt. Someone had gathered these items. Someone had hidden them. The question was who. The forest gradually opened into a small clearing. Nathan stepped between 2 enormous pines and stopped. In the center stood an aging cabin. Time had weathered the structure until the wood had turned gray. One section of the roof sagged slightly. Vines climbed across the porch railing. Yet smoke did not rise from the chimney. No vehicle stood nearby. The place looked forgotten. The puppy climbed the steps, crossed the porch, and disappeared through a partially open door. Nathan remained motionless at the edge of the clearing. His eyes narrowed. Because hanging beside that door, swaying gently in the morning breeze, was a weathered wooden plaque. Carved into the faded surface was a surname he had not seen in 18 years. Mercer. The name seemed to drain the sound from the forest. Nathan stared at the weathered plaque while the breeze stirred fallen leaves across the clearing. Mercer. The letters were faded and cracked by years of snow, rain, and sunlight, yet unmistakable. Ryan Mercer had never spoken much about his family. During long nights years ago, sitting beneath unfamiliar skies, he would occasionally mention an older sister somewhere in Montana. He spoke of her the way people speak of home. Quietly, carefully, as if the memory itself deserved respect. Nathan stepped forward. The old porch groaned softly beneath his boots. The puppy sat just inside the doorway, watching him. Not afraid, not excited, simply waiting. Dust floated through shafts of sunlight that slipped between gaps in the walls. The cabin smelled of cedar, old books, and time. Every surface carried the gentle wear of a life once lived. A rocking chair stood beside a stone fireplace. Shelves lined the walls. Framed photographs rested on tables covered by a thin layer of dust. Yet nothing felt abandoned. It felt paused, as though someone had stepped away and forgotten to return. Nathan moved deeper inside. His eyes drifted across dozens of family photographs. Children at birthday parties, Christmas mornings, fishing trips beside mountain lakes. Then he stopped. One frame near the fireplace held a younger Ryan Mercer standing beside a smiling woman who looked remarkably like him. Same eyes, same easy expression. Nathan picked up the photograph. On the back, written in careful handwriting, were 3 words. My little brother. He swallowed hard. The puppy approached and gently nudged his hand. Nathan looked down. The young German shepherd carried another object. A folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. Carefully, Nathan opened it. It was not a letter. It was part of a map. Several sections had been torn away long ago. One corner contained a familiar landmark from the region. Another featured a small red circle drawn by hand. Nathan frowned. The puppy immediately turned and trotted toward the back of the cabin. Curious now, Nathan followed. A narrow hallway led to a small bedroom. Sunlight filtered through lace curtains. A handmade quilt rested neatly on the bed. Beside it stood a wooden nightstand. The puppy stopped there and looked up expectantly. Nathan opened the drawer. Inside lay several documents secured beneath a rubber band. Utility bills, old receipts, greeting cards. Nothing unusual. Then he noticed a newspaper clipping folded among them. The headline caught his attention instantly. Local woman missing after winter storm. Beneath the title was a photograph. The woman from the family picture. Ryan's sister. According to the article, she had disappeared nearly 8 months earlier during severe weather in the mountains. Search efforts had eventually ended. No answers were ever found. Nathan slowly lowered the clipping. The room suddenly felt colder. Outside, the wind brushed against the cabin walls with a low whisper. The puppy stared at him with unwavering amber eyes. Then, without making a sound, he walked to the bedroom window and looked toward the distant forest beyond the clearing. Nathan followed the direction of his gaze. Far beyond the trees, barely visible through the afternoon light, stood the outline of an old fire lookout tower high on a ridge. And for the first time, he began to suspect that the puppy had not been leading him to the past. He had been leading him towards someone who might still be waiting. The following morning, Nathan returned to the cabin before sunrise. A pale blue light stretched across the mountains while a thin layer of frost covered the grass in the clearing. The puppy was already waiting on the porch. His tail thumped softly against the wooden boards when Nathan approached. For the first time, the young German shepherd stepped forward instead of backing away. Nathan crouched slowly and extended his hand. After a moment of hesitation, the puppy pressed his nose against Nathan's fingers. The gesture lasted only a second, but it felt like the beginning of trust. The puppy then turned toward the ridge and started walking. Nathan followed. The trail climbed steadily through dense forest. Pine branches swayed overhead while distant birds greeted the morning. Every few hundred yards, the puppy would stop and glance back as if making certain Nathan remained behind him. Nearly an hour later, they reached the old fire lookout tower. The structure stood weathered but upright atop the ridge, overlooking miles of forest and rolling hills. Nathan expected to find signs of abandonment. Instead, he noticed something unexpected. Smoke drifted from a small metal chimney attached to a nearby shed. Fresh footprints crossed the frost-covered ground. Someone was here. His pulse quickened. He approached carefully and knocked on the weathered wooden door. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the door slowly opened. A young girl stood inside. She appeared no older than 12. Long brown hair framed a cautious face. Her oversized flannel jacket looked several sizes too large, and her wide green eyes immediately shifted toward the puppy. The dog's entire body came alive. His tail wagged furiously as he rushed forward. The girl dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around him. Relief flooded her face. Nathan watched silently. The reunion felt genuine, familiar, as though they belonged together. His name is Scout, the girl finally said. Her voice was soft but steady. Nathan nodded. I am Nathan. She glanced toward the puppy again. He likes you. Nathan almost laughed. I'm not sure about that. For the next several minutes, the girl explained that she lived there with her grandmother. They kept mostly to themselves. The puppy had a habit of wandering, sometimes for hours, sometimes all day, yet he always returned. Nathan listened carefully. The pieces seemed to fit together. Ryan's sister, the missing woman, the family cabin, the puppy, the granddaughter. A simple explanation slowly formed in his mind. Perhaps the woman had never truly disappeared. Perhaps she had chosen isolation after a difficult season of life. Perhaps the entire mystery had been nothing more than a misunderstanding. The thought brought an unexpected sense of relief. For the first time since finding the dog tag, the puzzle seemed solved. As Nathan prepared to leave, the girl hesitated. Then she pointed toward a loose floorboard near the back wall of the shed. "Grandma always told me not to touch what is under there," she said quietly. But after she stopped coming home, Scout kept trying to dig it up. Nathan frowned. His relief vanished almost instantly. Because according to the girl, her grandmother had not returned in more than 8 months. For several seconds, Nathan said nothing. The wind rattled the metal siding of the lookout tower while Scout sat quietly beside the girl, his amber eyes moving between them. 8 months. The number echoed in Nathan's mind. The newspaper clipping at the cabin had reported the same timeline. The search had ended. People had moved on. Yet this child had remained here waiting. "What is your name?" Nathan asked gently. "Emily Mercer," she replied. The surname landed heavily. Another piece falling into place. Nathan slowly crossed the room and knelt beside the loose floorboard. The wood had been worn smooth by years of footsteps. He carefully lifted it. Beneath was a narrow compartment hidden between the support beams. Inside rested a small wooden box wrapped in an old wool blanket. Dust coated the lid. Scout immediately stood and placed one paw against the box, his tail wagging softly. Nathan exchanged a glance with Emily before lifting it free. The hinges creaked when he opened it. Inside were dozens of letters tied together with faded blue ribbon. Beneath them rested photographs, military documents, and an old leather journal. Nathan's heartbeat quickened. On the inside cover of the journal, written in neat handwriting, was a name. Sarah Mercer, Ryan's sister. The room fell silent except for the faint whistle of mountain wind outside. Nathan carefully turned the pages. Most entries described ordinary life. Gardening. Repairs around the cabin. Notes about Emily growing older. Memories of Ryan. But halfway through the journal, the tone changed. Sarah wrote about declining health. About fears she tried to hide from her granddaughter. About preparing for the future. Then Nathan reached an entry dated nearly a year earlier. His eyes froze on the words. Sarah described discovering a sealed military package among her late father's belongings. A package that had remained unopened for nearly 18 years. Nathan frowned. He opened the envelope stored beside the journal. Inside was a folded letter. The handwriting was instantly familiar. Ryan Mercer. Nathan's chest tightened. He unfolded the paper carefully. The letter had been written before Ryan's final deployment. It was addressed to Sarah. But near the end, another paragraph appeared beneath the family message. A personal note. One directed at Nathan Walker. "If you are reading this, brother, it means life took a different path than either of us expected. There is something I never asked of you because I believed I would have time. If I do not make it home someday, find my family. Make sure they know they were always my reason to keep going." Nathan lowered the letter. The words blurred slightly. 18 years. 18 years had passed without him ever knowing this message existed. Outside, clouds drifted across the afternoon sky, darkening the windows. Scout rested his head against Nathan's knee. Emily watched quietly from across the room. And in that moment, Nathan understood why the puppy had carried the dog tag first. It had never been about solving a mystery. It had been about leading him back to a promise he never knew he had broken. That evening, Nathan remained at the lookout tower long after the sun disappeared behind the mountains. The journal lay open beside him while the glow of a lantern filled the small room with warm golden light. Emily slept peacefully beneath a blanket on a nearby cot, exhausted from another day of waiting for someone who had never come home. Scout rested at Nathan's feet. Every so often, the puppy would lift his head and glance toward the journal as though he already knew every word written inside. Nathan continued reading. Sarah's final entries revealed details no newspaper had ever reported. She had been preparing to tell Emily about her Uncle Ryan. She wanted her granddaughter to know the kind of man he had been. Brave, kind, loyal. A man who never forgot the people he loved. But one entry near the end caught Nathan's attention more than all the others. Sarah described discovering a second envelope hidden inside the military package. Unlike the letter Nathan had just read, this one contained a map and several personal notes. According to her journal, she had intended to meet someone at an old ranger station deep in the mountains to deliver information connected to Ryan's final wishes. Then the entries stopped. No explanation. No conclusion. Just silence. Nathan carefully unfolded the map. A red circle marked a location nearly 15 miles north of the lookout tower. An abandoned ranger station hidden among remote valleys few people visited anymore. He studied the route while memories surfaced. During his years in Montana, he had heard local stories about the old station. Most people avoided it because the roads had fallen into disrepair. Reaching it would require hiking through rough terrain before winter weather closed the higher trails completely. Scout suddenly stood. The puppy walked to the map and placed one paw directly on the circled location. Nathan stared. The gesture was so deliberate that it sent a chill across his arms. "You already know, do you not?" he whispered. Scout's tail moved once against the wooden floor. Nathan leaned back in his chair. For the first time in years, he felt the familiar pull of a mission. Not one assigned by commanders or marked by deadlines. Something deeper. A responsibility. A promise. Outside, the wind swept across the ridge, carrying the scent of pine and approaching snow. The mountains stretched into darkness beneath a sky crowded with stars. Somewhere beyond those distant ridges waited answers that had remained hidden for 8 months. Perhaps even longer. Nathan looked toward sleeping Emily, then toward Scout. The puppy met his gaze with unwavering trust. In that quiet moment, Nathan finally understood why the little dog had never stopped returning to his porch. Scout had not been searching for help. He had been searching for the right person. And tomorrow, before dawn, they would follow the map together toward whatever truth still waited in the mountains. Before dawn, the mountains lay silent beneath a blanket of pale gray clouds. Nathan, Emily, and Scout began their journey while the world was still half asleep. Frost glittered along the trail, crunching softly beneath their boots. Scout led the way with unwavering confidence, moving ahead through the trees as though he had traveled this path countless times before. The forest grew denser as they climbed higher into the backcountry. Towering pines blocked much of the morning light, casting long shadows across the narrow trail. Every so often, Nathan checked the map from Sarah's journal. The route matched perfectly. Whoever had drawn it had known these mountains well. Hours passed. The air grew colder. Yet Nathan noticed something unusual. Scout never hesitated. At every fork, every fallen tree, every rocky crossing, the puppy chose a direction without pause. It was as if he was following something invisible. Around midday, they reached a secluded valley hidden between 2 ridges. There, partially concealed by evergreen trees, stood the old ranger station. Time had weathered the structure. Paint peeled from the walls. One shutter hung crooked beside a dusty window. Yet the building remained standing. Smoke stains darkened the chimney. Nathan's pulse quickened. Someone had used this place. Not recently, perhaps, but not long ago either. Scout suddenly accelerated, racing toward the porch. His tail whipped wildly behind him. Nathan exchanged a glance with Emily and followed. The front door stood slightly open. Inside, sunlight filtered through dusty windows and illuminated a simple room filled with old furniture, blankets, and shelves lined with supplies. Everything appeared organized, maintained, lived in. Then Emily gasped softly. On the far wall hung a framed family photograph. It showed Sarah smiling beside a younger Emily and a tiny German shepherd puppy no bigger than a loaf of bread. Scout. Nathan stepped closer. Beneath the photograph rested a small wooden table. On it sat another journal. The cover was newer than the one at the lookout tower. Carefully, Nathan opened it. The first pages were filled with Sarah's handwriting. She described visiting the ranger station often. She wrote about teaching Scout to carry messages and retrieve objects. She called him her little helper. But as Nathan turned the pages, his eyes stopped on one final entry. The words had been written only days before Sarah disappeared. If anything ever happens to me, Scout knows where to go. He knows who to find. Ryan always said Nathan Walker was a man who keeps his promises. I pray he proves my brother right. Nathan slowly lowered the journal. Emotion tightened his throat. Across the room, Scout sat quietly beside Emily. The puppy's amber eyes reflected the afternoon light. In that moment, the final pieces came together. None of the gifts had been random. None of the clues had been accidents. A devoted woman had trained a loyal dog to carry hope long before she vanished. And somehow, against impossible odds, that little German shepherd had completed the mission she trusted him to finish. Winter arrived gently across the Montana mountains in the weeks that followed. Snow settled on the ridges like white blankets, softening the sharp edges of the landscape. Nathan found himself making the drive to the lookout tower almost every day. What had begun as a mystery had quietly become part of his life. Emily no longer spent her days waiting alone. The old cabin was repaired room by room. The wood stove burned warmly through the evenings. Laughter slowly returned to places that had known only silence. Scout seemed happiest of all. The young German shepherd moved constantly between the people he loved, carrying sticks, gloves, newspapers, and occasionally things no one remembered losing. Yet every time he dropped something at Nathan's feet, the retired SEAL smiled. Because now he understood. Some gifts were never about the objects themselves. One snowy afternoon, while organizing boxes from the ranger station, Nathan discovered a final envelope tucked inside Sarah's journal. The paper had yellowed with age. Across the front, written in careful handwriting, were 3 simple words. For Nathan Walker. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single page. Sarah explained that Ryan had spoken about Nathan often, not as a teammate, not as a fellow serviceman, as family. She wrote that her brother trusted him completely. She thanked him for every memory he had given Ryan during the years they served together. Then came the final lines. If you are reading this, it means Scout found you. It means Hope found you too. Do not carry guilt for the years between. Life is not measured by how quickly we arrive, only by whether we answer when we are finally called. Nathan read the letter twice, then a third time. Outside the window, snowflakes drifted slowly through the fading afternoon light. Emily sat nearby doing homework. Scout slept beside the fireplace, his paws twitching as he dreamed. For a long moment, Nathan simply watched them. The loneliness that had filled his cabin for so many years felt strangely distant now. Ryan's dog tag still rested on the mantel above the fire. Beside it stood a framed photograph of Ryan, Sarah, Emily, and Scout as a puppy. A family picture. Nathan realized something then. The little dog had never brought him pieces of the past. He had brought him pieces of the future. Months later, visitors passing through the valley often noticed an older man, a smiling teenage girl, and a German shepherd walking together beneath the pines. Most never knew the story. They never knew how a puppy had carried a mission across mountains, through seasons, and into the heart of a man who thought his purpose was gone. But every evening, when the fire crackled and the snow glowed blue beneath the moonlight, Nathan would glance toward Scout resting at his feet and remember one simple truth. The greatest gift the puppy ever delivered was not a dog tag, a map, or a letter. It was a way home.